again, and welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection show showcases emerging indie authors who join us for a discussion of their newly published books. Join us for a conversation with our next guest author. Hello there, and welcome to Author Roundup. I am Emma, your host for today's episode. Today I have a self-published author, Stephen Campbell, and I want to go ahead and introduce Steve real quickly here. In 1986, Steve Campbell and his wife Wanda started a small street ministry in Columbus, Ohio's Short North District, a notorious crime area. They've spent more than 30 years serving the homeless and urban poor. And he went a little farther. Steve shares a collection of stories from this ministry that's now known as Columbus Dream Center. Hi, Steve. Welcome. How are you today?
Hi, Emma. I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Yes, of course. We're very, very excited to have you, and thank you so much for joining. I'm super excited to hear from you and to learn more about your book. Can you tell us more about He Went a Little Farther?
Sure. He Went a Little Farther contains a book containing 12 short, real-life stories of people from the streets of the inner city. And the thing I have to confess to you first, Emma, is that these are not my stories. Mm-hmm. They're God's stories. And they are God's stories told through my eyes. And they're the authentic stories of prostitutes, gang members, drug addicts, people that my wife and I met during 32 years of the street. And I would characterize these people as being people who are far from God. Mm-hmm. And the stories are about what happens when they were confronted dramatically by God's love and transforming power. Mm-hmm. They're also the stories of what happens when God stretches us to go a little farther for Him. It's written in devotional format. And one of the unique features is that each narrative contains a link to a video presentation of that same story. And reflecting life in the streets accurately, some of these stories are edgy. Some of them might make you a little bit uncomfortable at some point. But stories like Irv and the Girl at the Dumpster and A Hooker for Christmas, interesting enough titles, will challenge you and inspire you. And what we're finding is that it's leaving people wanting more. Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
That's a picture of the book.
Okay. So like you've mentioned, you and your wife started this street ministry in 1986 in a challenging area in Columbus. What motivated you to begin this ministry, and how did it evolve into the Columbus Dream Center?
The thing that motivated me to do this ministry was simply that I was a worship leader at that time, traveling the country and doing some speaking, working for an evangelist. Mm-hmm. And I was in Kansas, and my wife and I were in a large church there. And I got up in front of this church and I said, Wanda and I are leaving, and I named this ministry that we were with. And we're going to an area of Columbus called the Short North District to begin a street ministry called The Better Way. Mm-hmm. And I looked at Wanda, she looked at me. It was the first either one of us had heard of it. Mm-hmm. That was really kind of a test moment in our marriage, because it was a quiet ride home afterwards. Wanda knew what the Short North District was, and she was like, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going there. So we came back to Columbus. We prayed for several months about what to do here. We were or when to do it. Yeah. And then Wanda woke me up at 3:30 in the morning and said, I just had a dream. I saw myself sitting on a curb on High Street, which is the main north-south street through Columbus.
Right.
Sitting on a curb on High Street, leading a young drug addict to Jesus.
Oh my goodness.
And I said to her, well, why can't you hear from God between 9 and 5 like normal people? but I knew we were ready to go. Okay. And we had no money. We had no resources. We didn't know where our next meal was. We thought we were going to feed the poor, and we were the poor. But so that's how the ministry got started. And the way that it transformed into Columbus Dream Center is that over the years, God gave me a vision for a large ministry that would include actually a church in the heart of the Short North District that would be multicultural, multi-generational, that would be what I could only describe as a safe haven for people. We found that 65% of the children who came to our children's ministry between ages 4 and 11 had already been sexually abused, and almost always by a member of the family. 19 out of every 20 teens that we encountered did not have a father or a functional man in the home. Kids were facing incredible obstacles. The issues of the homeless that we dealt with, and we felt like we needed a safe haven where people could come and be safe from the pressures of the street. And over the years and God's intervention, that became Columbus Dream Center, affiliated with the International Ministry of Dream Centers, headquartered in Los Angeles, California.
Wow. That's amazing. What a selfless act that you and your wife have done to create this and make this possible is just truly amazing.
For us, it's just been a privilege. We don't feel like it's been a sacrifice. We feel like it's been a gift that God gave us.
Yeah, of course. And going back to your book, it highlights, like you said, stories of individuals transformed by God's love, which I love that, by the way. Can you give our listeners maybe a tiny glimpse of one of the book's impactful stories that stands out to you, showcasing the power of God's work in people's lives? Just a little glimpse, just a little.
Sure, that's a great question and a really difficult one to answer in just a little bit, but I'm gonna try to do that. One of our most famous stories out of this is a story called A Hooker for Christmas. And it's the story of a 16-year-old hooker by the name of Lisa, who came to us directly from jail. A former gang leader and his wife sent her to us. And she was everything a 16-year-old hooker can be, and I mean that in the toughest sort of way. And Wanda manages to lead this girl to Christ in time and tells her, Lisa, if you ever get in trouble, you can call on the name of Jesus and Jesus will help you. So Christmas Eve comes. We didn't know Lisa had stiffed a drug dealer for over $2,000 worth of cocaine. Now that's not a good career move to make. And the drug dealer picked her up on Christmas Eve, abducted her at gunpoint. He's taking her down the interstate around the city where he's going to shoot her and kill her. She remembers what Wanda told her, and going 75 miles an hour down the interstate, she pushes the car door open and screams, Jesus, help me, and jumps out of the car.
Oh my gosh.
She lands on the berm, rolls down the median, and comes to the bottom of it, picks herself up, dusts herself off. Her clothes are torn. She's got a few bruises here and there. But basically, it was just a reminder not to do that again. And she worked her way through the back alley streets to get to a crack house down on Buttles Avenue and call me at 11:30 on Christmas Eve and say, Steve, this is Lisa. I'm in trouble. You got to come get me.
Oh, wow.
And my assistant and I picked her up. We got her out of there just before the drug dealer showed back up and shot a 15-year-old who he thought was her.
Oh my gosh.
The rest of the story tells what happened in Lisa's life from there.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And that's just one story out of 12.
That's one of 12.
Oh my gosh.
And not necessarily the most dramatic one.
Oh my gosh. So we can expect more like that.
Yeah.
Wow. So your book is, like you mentioned, super uniquely written. It's written in devotional format of 12 different stories by individuals over the course of different years. How did you believe this way? How do you believe this format enhances the reader's experience?
Well, I think it enhances their experience in several ways. One is that it is suitable for almost any application. The unique thing about the stories is that all 12 happen to take place between Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Now spaced out over 30 years.
Oh,
But
wow.
in that time frame, however, it is not a holiday book.
Mm-hmm.
You can use it for holiday, you can use it for other application. It's written to be, it can be read simply as a storybook, or it can be read as a devotional. It has devotional questions with it, and
Mm-hmm.
and that will also work. We're finding it's working for individuals, and we have small groups that are using it as well. So
Okay.
there's the opportunity to use it a number of ways. An application that is truly unique for it is that we're finding out very quickly it has a very large application, a strong application to men and women who are incarcerated. And in fact, we have just broken open the ability to get this into one of the penitentiaries here in Ohio, and we're working on others right now, and this is going to be a major goal for us going forward. So
Oh,
it has
wow.
a lot of applications.
Oh, wow. That's a really good idea. I like that you mentioned it has devotional questions, so
Yeah,
it can help you reflect.
yeah.
I like that. Okay, and also, so it's a devotional, and I think you mentioned what's really cool about your book is that each narrative contains a QR code
Yes.
that when scanned, it takes the reader to a video presentation of the story being shared. Who is reading the story? Is it you presenting the story?
Actually, I'm not reading the story to you. I'm telling you that story in
Telling
that.
you the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear it in my voice. You're gonna hear it from my eyes because
Okay, great.
I'm telling it. You might not hear every word exactly as it is in the book, but it is definitely the story that's in the book.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I love that approach and idea. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, we came up with the idea because we had videos first that we were doing before we decided to do the
Oh,
book, and we have a website out there with over 50 videos on it. And
okay.
so as we did this, I don't really remember whether my videographer looked at me and said, "Hey, what about putting videos in the book?" or whether I looked at him and said, "Hey, what about putting videos in the book?" But between the two of us, it's like God dropped it in one of our minds.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that because you get the actual physical book and then at the same time you have an audiobook essentially.
Right, and that's exactly right. I have a friend in Kansas who is 92, who is blind. Her mind is sharp as she can be. Well, I sent the book out to her in one of the very first copies that I got. I sent out to her, and someone in the assisted living area where she is has been reading the stories to her, but then they can scan her code, and she can sit there and listen to me tell her that story, and that's
Oh,
turning out to be a real blessing.
oh my gosh. Yes, I love that. And also not to mention that it's useful in the sense that it's for different learning abilities. So if someone is more an auditory learner, they can learn that way. So that's another benefit as well as having the videos. That's really cool.
Right.
So in the description of your book, it mentioned that these are not, and you mentioned it just now, that these are not your stories, but God's stories. Can you go a little bit more into the role of faith and divine intervention in shaping these narratives?
That's a really wide open question.
I'm
So,
sorry.
no,
I'm sorry.
no. I'm going to say thank you for that. Well,
I mean, it's a huge focus of your book, so I want you to explain it a little bit more.
I'm gonna try to bring it back to you.
Okay.
The thing about it is, Lisa, excuse Lisa, that thinking of Lisa in the story, pardon me, Emma,
It's
is
okay.
that there's no way that my wife or I or any other human being could have ever done what God has done. And so we are trying to be extremely watchful that we give credit where all credit's due in this place, because it's all due to God. And I don't mean that in some soupy spiritual way. I'm telling you that over the years, we have lived by God's power in the streets. I don't know how many times I've been shot at. I honestly don't. We don't know how many times we've had people try to kill people who were in our ministry, including coming at someone point blank with a butcher knife, and the person holding their arm up and not being able to bring their arm down because they couldn't move it. We've seen these dramatic things of guns stuck in people's face and people not able to pull the trigger on the gun. My wife stood there one night in the front of our ministry center, and this story's not in the book. It's not in this book. It may be in the next book. But she was telling him about Jesus, and he told her that if she said Jesus one more time to him, he was going to blankety blank 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 kill her. And she looked at him straight in the face and said, "Jesus loves you." And he fell down. This guy was big, and he fell down on his face on the floor and got born again.
Oh my goodness.
We've seen this time and time again. It's become commonplace in our lives over the years. In the story, in the book, this book, one of the characters I'm going to introduce people to is my guardian angel, whose name is Spike. And that's why I don't know what God calls him, but I call him Spike, and he's been with me a lot. And I've come to count on Spike in tough times, and I've seen him rescue me more than one time, and he actually plays a role in some of the stories in this book. So I'm just telling you, this book is not quite your ordinary everyday. So we've seen God's intervention over the years on our behalf, and all credit goes to him. And the things that we've seen happen in people's lives, we're not able to do. There's a story in this book about a little girl who was mauled by a pit bulldog, and her face was just left in hamburger and shreds. And her mother brought her to me and asked me to pray for her, and I laid hands on her. I don't see this girl again for several years. And her mother brings her back, and she's perfectly healed, and they didn't have any money for doctors or the surgery that was needed. They've never been back to a doctor. Her face was completely, totally healed. So we've seen God's intervention over the years. And
wow, yeah.
That's why I say, these aren't my stories. I'm just a story. I'm just a story. They're God's stories.
Right. Oh, wow. That's incredible. Yeah, it's so crazy. The amount of like scary situations you and your wife have been in, but I mean, you guys have been called, and it's crazy that you prosper, and so many lives have been impacted, and it's incredible.
It has been.
So another theme in the book, I'm sure serving the homeless and urban poor for over 30 years undoubtedly comes with challenges, a little bit like we talked about. Can you share more of the challenges you faced, and I guess the rewarding aspects of your long-term commitment to the ministry, as far as maybe like getting the ministry like established and how it's evolved a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you this real brief excerpt. This isn't in the book. I shouldn't call it an excerpt, but incident. And then I'm going to tell you what is the hardest thing that I ever have to do.
Okay.
And it is this. Early on, we realized that people didn't have blankets. People were sleeping in unheated houses. They're living in camps. They're sleeping under cardboard boxes. And so we got some partners together, got a couple of radio stations to partner with us, and we did a thing called Blanket Columbus. I talk about it in this book.
Okay.
We got 1,000 blankets, brand new blankets, donated at Christmas time.
Oh, wow.
And we used them. We took them to homeless camps, and then we took some into crack houses. and there was a blizzard. So we go out in this blizzard and we're going to crack houses, and the police stopped us in this particular neighborhood and said, "What are you doing here?" And we told them what we were doing, and they said, "If you're crazy enough to do this, just go ahead." So we get to this particular crack house, and the door of it is snowed in. You can't get in the door.
Oh, wow.
So we knock on the door. We can't get in that door, but they open up a window, and Wanda crawls in this window into this crack house carrying blankets. She gets in there. The drugs are on the table. The guns are on the table. There's a dealer sitting there with a naked baby in his hand. And Wanda says to this guy, shares the gospel with him and says, "Now, wouldn't you like to make Jesus Lord of your life?" I mean, Wanda's really aggressive. That's about it with Wanda. "Wouldn't you like to make Jesus Lord of your life?" And this guy looks at her and says, "Lady, I can't think of any reason in the world why I wouldn't do that."
Aww.
And he gets born again, and a girl grabs her in there that night in tears, a crack addict, and says, "Lady, you got to get me help. You got to get me help." And that and other incidents like that, many of them told about in the book, pushed us to go a little farther. Which you find out in the key scripture for this book, Matthew 26:39. That's exactly what Jesus did, and it's something we look over a lot, and it says in this verse in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he went a little farther, and he went a little farther. And that's what it does do. The most difficult thing that we ever have to do is to be in our center at night, in the winter, and we have maybe 100 of our friends in there. And we have to open the door and turn them out into the night, and to see them walk off into the snow, knowing that many of them have no place to go. Fortunate they'll have a tent or a sleeping bag, but they may be under a cardboard box, looking for an abandoned elevator to sleep in someplace. Maybe they're going to crawl in a dumpster, where more than one of my friends have died of freezing to death in dumpsters. And that's tough.
It is, yeah.
But it pushed me to go farther.
And that's the title of your book, yeah. Not to mention how cold it gets in the Midwest, like below zero. Like it's so sad. And I mean, that's so incredible that you and your wife also is an amazing, incredible woman. I wish she was on this interview too. I'd love to meet Wanda, but it's just amazing what you guys have done and the amount of people that you've helped, and it's incredible. So we talked about a little bit what inspired the book. How did you know that you wanted to share it with the world? I know you mentioned that the videos kind of inspired maybe a book, but what got you to seek out publishing?
Okay, well, over the years, you meet a lot of people when you do what we've done. And then over the years, hundreds of people, I mean literally hundreds of people, have said, "You should write a book." And I've always said to that, "Well, thank you." And I thought inside, when pigs fly, that's when I'll write a book. I never, ever wanted to write a book. I mean, never. Let me make it clear, ever did I want to write a book. So I'm sitting on a beach in Florida watching a Gulf Coast sunset. Beautiful setting. We've taken a 2-week break. Just relaxing. And in that majestic setting and moment, I said to God, "Is there anything you want me to do for you?" Now, I thought that was an innocent question. Until I felt this nudging in my heart that all of us know, that said, "Well, what haven't you done that I already told you to do?" And that was a really quiet moment.
Hmm.
I didn't have to stop and think about it. I knew. So here's the book.
Here it is.
Here it is. And to be honest with you, I am so thankful that God allowed me to write his stories of the streets. I
Hmm.
didn't think I wanted to, but I'm
Hmm.
so thankful that he allowed me and pushed me to do it.
Yeah. So it seems like, for the gist of what I'm getting, you've never written professionally or
No,
personally?
what I've written over the years is lots of stories for video and for me to be able to have notes to be able to tell them in public. So I had that experience, but no, I mean, anyone who went to school with me would tell you it's a miracle that I ever graduated from school. So no, I've never written professionally before.
Okay. And how does it feel to have a published, tangible book of all of God's stories?
It is, it's absolutely amazing. Uh,
Hmm.
it just is. Um, you know, from the time that I'm sitting on that park bench, ten
Hmm.
minutes later, 10 minutes later, after I heard God speak into my heart on that beach, my phone rings, and it's one of my most trusted advisors. And he doesn't even know I'm in Florida.
Hmm.
He says to me, he says, Steve, about this book that you're supposed to write, it's about,
What?
he said, it has to do with videos. That's his message to me. Does it have
Oh my
videos?
God.
And I'm like, what? And he doesn't know. And so 2 weeks later, I'm back in Ohio. I'm sitting in one of my other most trusted advisors' offices.
Hmm.
He had no comment about anything. I mean, we haven't seen each other in a couple of months.
Okay.
We sit down in his office, and he says, Steve, he says, I want to talk to you about this book you're supposed to write. It has to do with videos. And I'm like, I think I can get this one.
I think I got it. Two and two together.
Okay, good.
It was
Good.
it was meant to be.
Yeah, we're on the right path here. So, so that's why the book has video links in it that it
Yeah.
has to. And so we actually spent several years just building video files of this. Then
Okay.
from the time we got ready to write the book, um, it was about 9 months of actually writing the book, taking the
Okay.
video stories and so on, and turning them into
Wow.
manuscripts and things.
Okay.
But
Wow.
it's been interesting.
Yeah. Well, 9 months, that's amazing that you had those videos and that it's transformed into a book. And 9 months, I mean, that's pretty good to write a book. Usually it takes years and years. So,
Well,
um,
and I think it depends on how you look at it. In some ways, I can say, okay, we wrote the book in 9 months. And another way, I can look at it and say, actually, my first file of anything like this,
yeah.
I hate to tell you this, it's
Oh
dated
no.
2016.
Oh wow.
So it's dated, the first time. Now, that was before the conversation in Florida. But I
Hmm.
sat down before because I knew I was supposed to write a book, and I sat down to do it, and I hated it. I hated the discipline of it. But
Yeah.
but when I first started thinking about it was way back then. So how long did it take to write a book? I don't know.
Yeah. When was that in Florida that you were finally like, okay, I'm going to
That
do
was,
this?
that would have been 2017 or 2018, 5.5 years ago.
Okay. Do you have any like moments or memories of your writing experience that stuck with you? I know it's a little different because you have all these videos, so it's not just like coming out of your head like a fiction book. So what are some moments that stuck with you?
Yeah, I think the moments that stick with me at this point are are, one, what the best part of it was, my favorite part of it, and two, what the hardest part of it was.
Okay.
And the best part of it was that I got to write down what I had witnessed God do in the lives of individuals in the stories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've told most of these stories hundreds of times. There is one story in the book that I had never told before.
Oh, wow.
Never told it before. The time wasn't such that I felt like I could tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another story in the book that I had rarely ever told because it's a troubling story. But some of these stories I've told literally hundreds of times.
Mm-hmm.
They've never grown old to me because I live those stories. You can tell I get involved in the things, and I live those stories when I tell them.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to live them in a different dynamic, writing them down on paper, because what it was like was that while I'm sitting there writing, I'm sitting there talking to you. I'm sitting here talking to my friend, Emma.
Mm-hmm.
And we've become friends, and I'm sharing a story with her. And one of the things that happens to me when I go someplace, invariably people ask me to tell them a story.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's almost like top stories. People want to hear these stories.
Yeah.
So in writing, I got to tell that story to a good friend, and the paper became my good friend that I got to tell it to. So I really enjoyed that more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I like that.
It never grows old. It never grows cold.
Mm-hmm.
The most difficult part of the process was getting started.
Mm.
I felt like a painter, and I'm not a painter. I have a son who is, but I am not a painter. I felt like a painter who's hesitant to put the first brush stroke on his canvas because he's afraid of making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get started? So everyone's different, and I learned that as I talk to other friends who've written books. Everyone's different. But for me, I needed to throw some paint out on the canvas and then work with it and see what we could turn it into. But so I found out that for me, it was like I needed to get something out there, and
Mm-hmm.
then go from that. But if I had to say, okay, I've got it step by step, line by line, perfect,
It'll never get done.
that's not Steve.
Yeah.
That's not the way I did it. So that was those were the incidents in the writing thing that were really unique to me. It was
Yeah.
and then how much fun it was. And I have to say this, for the guy that didn't want to write a book, I'm getting ready to begin a second one, and I am so looking forward to it.
Oh, that's amazing. I know that, yeah, I was going to ask you, I know that you mentioned a second book. So, wow, that's incredible. And it's crazy to think that if you didn't act on what God told you to do, and also if you just were like, oh, it'll be too hard, and then didn't do it, then like it would have been so sad to just not have it into a book, and just look how far you've come. It's just incredible.
One of the interesting things in all of that process has been that in the feedback that we have received, and we've had preliminary copies out on the market. The book's just now being released, but we've had preliminary copies out on the market. In the feedback we received, I have had one, I guess you might call it, negative piece of feedback. And I had a woman get very angry with me, and I mean, she got angry
Oh.
with the fact that we had only put 12 stories in the book.
Oh, she wanted more.
When I say she was upset, she was upset that there were only 12 stories in this book. So it was like, okay, so I promise you, there's a second book. I'm not sure how many stories it's going to have, but it's going to be more than 12.
Oh, wow. She must have zoomed through that. She must have, like, front to cover.
Well, what we're finding out is, the book is not big. It's a small book,
Okay.
but and we're finding out that people sit down with it, and some of them read it through in one reading.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go. But those people that do that have not read it devotionally. They've just
Mm-hmm.
read it as a story. And what
Mm-hmm.
we're finding out is they're going back and rereading it in a devotional.
Oh,
And
okay.
a lot of people are reading one a day or one a week or whatever it is, with maybe
Okay.
with a group. But so
That's
it's getting
interesting.
read more than one way.
Yeah. Okay. You've mentioned feedback, and what has been the nicest feedback or book review you've received about your book? I know it's
Well,
very new, but.
I went into the online reviews that have come through Amazon, and I just went down through them, and I grabbed three. The first one says, "This is a terrific book. Anyone who calls Jesus their Savior should read this book. Take your time on each story and reflect on its power and glory that God shows us evidenced by each story. Thank you, Steve, for sharing your journey."
Mm.
The second one, written by, and that person is nameless. The second one, written by someone, just they identifies himself as KJ, says, "These powerful real life stories are an inspiration to all who read them. The stories are taken from the streets and given to us by Steve and Wanda in a compassionate way. I like the scripture included with each chapter as well as the thoughtful questions." The third one, written by someone who identifies himself as Larry, says, "These stories are so inspirational. Each story causes me to reflect on my life and to look for what God is trying to say to me. Steve and Wanda gave themselves over to God's purposes. These stories show that so well. I want to see Jesus after reading these stories."
Those are so good. Those are really good reviews. What does it feel like hearing those and reading those?
Well, I sat down and I read through, I don't know, but a number of reviews that have come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be honest with you, I had tears running down my face.
Oh.
It's very, it's gratifying. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's humbling.
Yeah, I bet. What
But
is?
I know the guy who's been in the streets, and I know that the guy that's in the streets, let me let you in on a secret, he ain't all that good.
Mm-hmm.
He just ain't all that good. So, uh, so to have those kind of things, said about you is humbling. But the
Mm-hmm.
most humbling thing is to be able to see that the stories are connecting and reaching people.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
important. That's the big deal with it.
Yeah. What feedback has it been like hearing from family, friends, and your faith community as well?
Um, it has been it has been amazing. Um, the thing that's really I just couldn't anticipate was how many people within our faith community and family reached out and grabbed these books. And some of
Mm-hmm.
them, people have been grabbing these books in quantities of 12, 15, 18.
Oh,
And,
wow.
yeah. I mean, I never anticipated what I've seen so far. I don't know what this book's going to do. It's just coming out. I have no idea what it's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what it's done within this faith community and within our friends and family has been just amazing. Uh, so that's been very gratifying
Mm-hmm.
to see that happen. Not so much because it's me, because I've known a lot of these people for years, but to see what it's doing with people's faith and people grabbing it and people coming back and saying, "Wow, you're challenging me to think about things that I have not thought about in a long time. You're challenging me to, we're talking about what we can do to do more."
Yeah.
People tell me we are looking at how to redirect our giving so it becomes more effective. I mean, these areas of people's lives where, when something touches the way you look at your giving, it touched your soul. It
Yeah.
did. That's been.
Yeah. And not to mention when you say that people have been scooping multiple books up, that just shows that the message that your book has is so important and that it's for everyone. Everyone can be impacted by it. And, like, okay, this book has stories and devotional and inspiration, and I know someone who could benefit from that. And that's amazing.
I will tell you this. I gave a copy to someone very close to me, and he called the next day and said, "I want 100."
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
What was it like when you told your wife, Wanda, that you wanted to write and publish a book? What was her initial thought?
I think her initial thought was, "What took you so long?
What took you so
What took you so long? What took you so long?" She had Wanda has gone from somebody who was first reaction to going to the short north was like, maybe you, buddy. But you have to understand, when we started, I told you we had no money. Wanda worked an executive position downtown in Columbus. She was an administrative assistant in a large office downtown.
Okay.
And we lived off of Wanda's salary. I was in the streets, but Wanda would get up in the morning and ride the bus downtown. And then she might ride the bus to the short north afterwards, or I might pick her up. And she would go to the streets and she would work until after midnight.
Oh my goodness.
Then she'd go home and go to bed and get up and be on the bus at 7 o'clock the next morning to go back downtown. She bought in, and she is an amazing warrior. An amazing warrior. This little gal who's just 5 foot nothing and doesn't weigh more than a whisk. And it's just the sweetest thing you could ever imagine. Is just rock solid warrior, and she has been so all in over the years. And she's the more cautious of us, far and away the more cautious of us.
Okay.
But she's always ready to follow the Lord's leading. And once she knows something is the Lord's leading, there's no stopping that girl.
Oh,
Don't try.
amazing.
And she can do more work than any 3 people you've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
Just amazing. And so her reaction has been that she got on the board. She said, "Whatever you need."
Yeah.
She was at one time, for probably close to 10 years in her life, she was a professional proofreader.
Oh wow.
So what an asset to have as somebody who's writing.
Right.
I had a proofreader. I did get an editor on this side of the publishing process. Of course, we had editor and publisher, but that's something I would strongly recommend to people, is to get a good editor on the pre-publishing side, because they bring so much more than just correction of grammar.
Right.
But with this team that came together, they helped me so much and made this so much better. And Wanda just led that. She was kind of like our general manager of things.
Oh wow.
Because she had these skills of doing this.
Yeah.
So,
oh my goodness.
Really, in some ways, it probably ought to be her name on the book, not mine.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, Wanda sounds like an amazing, incredible woman. You're very lucky.
And I am most blessed. I am most blessed.
That's amazing. What advice would you give someone who is wanting to publish his or her first book?
Great question. I think I'd have probably three things to tell them.
Okay.
The first would be, however long you think it's going to take, it's probably going to take a lot longer. And you need to allow that and allow for it, because the fact is, stuff happens and
Mm-hmm.
stuff and things take time.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't rush that.
Yeah.
Allow yourself. I would never start this out and say, okay, I have this block of time to get this book written in.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm going to take the time it takes to write this book and make it the best that I can make it.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say to people is, allow the process to accomplish its work. And the process is writing and everything else that comes after that until the book comes out in print.
Mm-hmm.
Allow that process to take its work, because the process is going to provide resistance. And you're going to come up against resistance at all levels and times in this. But that
Mm-hmm.
resistance serves to make you better. It's
Oh.
not there to destroy you. The resistance serves to make you better. So
Mm-hmm.
it makes you stronger. It makes your book better. So allow that process to accomplish its work. Don't. Sometimes it's going to aggravate you. Sometimes it may just make you angry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's okay, but allow it to do its work.
Mm-hmm.
I came to a couple of times in this process that I didn't know if we were going to be able to push through to something, or whether we were going to have to turn around and go another direction. Well, that was a really good place to get to, because it made me decide this is what's really important. And oh, you know what? I thought this really mattered, but this doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
And that all serves to make your book better.
Wow.
That's the second thing I'd tell people. Third thing I'd tell people is, it's a journey. It's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Relax and enjoy it. A journey. And oh, by the way, sidebar, it will be easier if you allow God to take the lead. Let God sit in first chair.
Mm-hmm.
Let him be the first chair of it every day. And it'll be easier if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a journey. It's going to take time. It's going to have its moments. In that journey, there are going to be potholes. There are going to be obstacles in the road. There are going to be turns in the road. There are going to be detours. That's okay. That's part of the journey. Let that accomplish its work, but just relax and enjoy that journey, and don't get frustrated by it. Those are the three things I'd say to anybody who's looking to write or his or her first book.
Wow. Yeah, those are all really, really good things. Definitely ones that will keep you grounded for sure. What was it like to receive your book in the mail?
What was
Your
it like
first book?
receiving the book?
Yeah, and seeing it in person.
I opened it up and I cried.
Good moments, huh? Yeah.
I cried. Hard for me to not get emotional even thinking about it. I cried for joy over the journey that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked at this book, and it took me to the lives of the people that are in the book, and the people whose lives I know of who aren't in the book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this book is subtitled Stories of Challenge and Inspiration from the Streets of an American Inner City. And that's what it really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about these people and understand something about the homeless population. The homeless population in general, many of them are heroes of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I admire these people. Yet you have to be resourceful to survive on the street. Street years are like dog years. 1 year on the streets is like 7 or 8 years of regular life.
Mm-hmm.
A 55-year-old person who's been homeless for most of their life is a rarity. You don't live that long being on the streets. It's tough, and it takes every bit of your focus and resourcefulness that you can have to survive a day up there. It's tough. And by and large, this isn't a across the board statement, but by and large, most of the homeless people that I know don't blame anybody else for their problems. They realize they've made bad decisions. There are three factors that are generally the three big factors in homelessness. One is addiction, far and away. The second is mental illness, and a third is criminal background. Well, it involves bad choices. And most of the homeless people I know are quick to admit, I've made bad choices. And they accept responsibility. And here's the thing I love about them. They don't whine. They don't whine.
They don't complain.
I open that door at night, and they go out the door into possible death, into the freezing cold, and they never complain. Ever.
Yeah, getting emotional.
So when I look at this book, I think about them. I think about them. That's what it's been like.
Oh my gosh, I just kind of get emotional there. I really think that this book is for everyone because, in a sense, that we take things for granted. You know, everyone takes things for granted. And a lot of the times it's hard to realize and understand that people are people and everyone is a human being. And also just this book, it just shows that homeless people are individuals. They have feelings. They are humans as well. You know, like homeless people that are a part of a society, whether some people want them to be or not, they should be acknowledged. They should be spoken to because, you know, we're all humans and they deserve respect just as much as anyone else.
Yep. When I started the book, I had two goals. The two goals when I started the book was to, along with the assistance of my team, turn out the best book that we could turn out. The best quality book that we could turn out, both in the writing, the videos, the production of the book, which is one reason I went with Westbow Publishers. I thought they'd give me the best book. I feel like we hit that goal. We turned out the best book that, with my limited abilities, the resources that we had, that we could turn out. We accomplished that goal. It left me with one other goal, and that goal is simply this. This book is not about money. This book is not about my name being on the cover. The goal for this book is to get this book into the hands of as many people as is humanly possible in order that that book can accomplish its work. That's what it is. And so from everything that I am doing forward is about that, to try to get the book in the hands of as many people as I can get it into. And that is a strong part of that includes developing a strategy intended to make it available to men and women who are incarcerated. But as far as a personal, professional goal, book goal of the year, get this in its hands of as many people as possible. And I set this year aside for that. The speaking engagements I'm taking, and I just booked a speaking tour this spring. And I'm taking speaking engagements kind of wherever they come this year, but they're all for the same purpose. I'm not out there trying to sell books. I'm trying out to find ways to get the books in his hands of many people as possible. So that's,
That's it.
what I'm doing. Certainly book sales become a significant part of that, but
Right.
that is my goal.
Yeah.
That's what I'm about.
I want to mention your author website as well, just so our viewers and listeners know. Steve does have a author website that has videos that we've mentioned. It mentions your mission and focus, why you do what you do, in-depth blog about relative topics, information about you and your wife, Wanda, and more. Can you go a little bit more into what your website has so viewers can find it?
Sure. He went a little further, just now being released to bookstores. It's available on Amazon. They can find it on Facebook, YouTube ads, Google ads. It's on my website, www.thejourneyoflife.org.
Okay.
And on there, you just follow the book ribbon and it's there. And it should be available soon at preferred resellers, just as quick as the book comes off the press, and that's what it's waiting for right now. But they can find find on our author websites all that kind of information that they find there. Everything you want to know about the book, and also you can reach me, personally off of there as well.
Okay. Well, I just have one last question for you, Steve. For those inspired by your story and looking to make a positive impact in their communities, what advice or encouragement would you offer to individuals or groups considering similar outreach initiatives?
Here's what I would say to people about this. If this was easy, everybody'd be doing it. I'm not going to tell you it's been easy, but I'm going to tell you it's simple. It ain't complicated. It's not complicated at all. It's simply about how willing are you to let God take you a little farther each day. In the most famous story that's going to appear in the book, it's a story called Irv. It's the story of a guy that we found off the street who I won't bother to describe him, but he was a wino that sat on a wall every night, drunk, and after 3 weeks of praying for him, he showed up at our place. Came in the place, got a cup of coffee, walked over. I only had one good chair in the whole place. I had one beautiful gold flex steel rocking chair in the place. He went over, sat down with it, passed out, spilled his coffee, and wet his pants in my chair. And I soon found out that life was a lot easier when he was passed out, because when he was awake, he was really disagreeable. And whatever I did for this guy never satisfied. If you need to have gratification coming out of this kind of work, don't get into it. It's not about the gratification you get back. But I could never do anything to satisfy this guy. Now, you've never had anybody in your life like this, Emma, I'm sure. Somebody that just, whatever you did, you just couldn't satisfy them. You just couldn't do it well enough. You couldn't make them happy.
No, never.
He cussed me out once because I gave him a brand new pair of pants. And they were the right size, but he wanted blue and they were green. He gave me the cussing of my life. And I served this guy every night for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Every day when I got up and I got ready to go to the short north, that old man was going to be there. And nothing I could do would ever satisfy him. And I got to just be honest with you. I grew to hate his guts. I hated him with a passion. I couldn't stand the thought. Every night he was going to be there. But even though I hated him, I went there every day. And I served him. And after 2.5 years, we led him to Christ. We led him to Christ. And he's the subject of a story in the book called Earth. And which has become our most famous story of all the stories we've ever had.
Oh, wow.
So what I would say to anybody wanting to start it, first of all, know you're called, because it's only the calling that'll keep you there. Because the hours aren't great, people don't always treat you that well, and the money's not all that phenomenal. So know you're called. But once you're there, it's not complicated. Keep it simple. Keep doing what the Lord tells you to do. I don't care what everybody else says. I don't care what this person says. And I don't care who comes against you. I don't care what they threaten you with. I don't care what they say. I'm there to serve God. And that's the God who protects me. And besides, he gave me that archangel called, that guardian angel named Spike, that you can read about. So that would be my advice to people, would be that.
Wow, that's incredible.
Just keep it simple.
Keep it simple. I love that. Okay, well, it's been wonderful speaking with you today, Steve. It's been an amazing interview, and it's been wonderful hearing about you and all the work you've done, you and your wife, and congratulations on publishing a book. Is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with today?
No, I think we've covered it. I think
we covered a lot, didn't we?
Your efforts, and I appreciate it. And God bless you. And I pray that people will buy the book, read the book, and that they will be challenged and inspired both by it. I pray that it will.
I have been. Oh my goodness.
I pray it'll cause you to laugh and it'll cause you to cry as well. And just listen to the voice of God.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for creating such an impact on society. Your work is amazing, and I wish you well with your book. You can find He Went a Little Further at westbowpress.com for purchase. You can also purchase at Amazon or Barnes & Noble as well. And thank you so much to everyone listening, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Blessings. Bye-bye.